r/AskReddit by talking Reddit. People who have survived a murder attempt by dumb luck. What's your story? Throwaway because it got some media. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I was representing this guy that had embezzled almost $500k from his business partner. He was looking down the barrel at several years in prison, a bunch of his assets had been seized by the government, was being sued by multiple creditors for north of $2 million, and was in the midst of an ugly divorce, and wasn't allowed to see his kids. I was one of 3 lawyers he had: criminal, civil and divorce. He was drinking a lot and using coke. I used to get this incoherent phone calls in the middle of the night that ranged from threats to crying. He came to my office one day and asked for me, but I was in court. My secretary said he was perfectly civil. He then went to his divorce lawyer's office and shot him to death. Got stopped by the police a short distance away and was wounded in a shootout. He would later tell the cops that he had come to my office to shoot me that day and also planned to shoot his civil attorney. Why? You were presumably hired on to defend him, so why did he even do that? So confusing. He was not in a rational state of mind. People sometimes have a tendency to blame their lawyers when the situation isn't going to get resolved how they like. I know 2 other attorneys who have been assaulted or threatened with weapons by clients. Was a bouncer at a club in LA for a minute in the 90s. Stopped some dudes clearly affiliated in a gang at the door after they refused security checks. After a few minutes of their threats and Manson lamps, they left spewing all sort of warnings. A little later it starts to wind down, and because it's a little slow and we are overstaffed, so I start to drink. I get a bit drunk, not wasted, but sleepy bust, so I tell my buddy I'm going to go lay down in the back of his car for a while. A few minutes after lying down I realize I have to piss. I get out and stumble a few into a spot between a guard gate for a parking lot and a building for a little privacy. There's a few dozen people milling around in front of the club. I'm about 25 feet away from the club's entrance and just off an alleyway. While I'm relieving myself, a dude runs right past in front of me, around the guard booth to my rear, and unloads a 9mm recovered rounds from backseat/trunk/roof/bumper into the backseat of the car I just crawled out of. Bam 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 bam. Unloading into the car. He then turns, runs right back past me, and down the alley into the night. Don't think he saw me at all. Nothing really came of it, except my partner was convinced I was a marked man and refused to be near me for a year or so. I was 15 and outside in my garage petting my cat. It was November, so it was already dark by 5 p.m. Someone opened the door behind me without me hearing, grabbed me by my ponytail and starting dragging me outside. They hit me on my head with a brick and knocked me out. Pulled me halfway around my house when, I'm guessing this is when, they stabbed me on the left side of my stomach. This must have brought me out of my daze, because my mom said she heard me scream from inside where she and my brother and sister were in the kitchen. They came out the front door and saw me bleeding out on the sidewalk, called 911, had 12 stitches, double layer, and a severe concussion, and whiplash, didn't eat, and hardly slept for a week. They never found them. Horrid. So glad you survived. Thank you. Me too. I'm 27 now, feels like a different life. I was riding in a train across Eastern Europe. I was running low on money, and even though I had been warned that a woman should not travel alone in second class seating, I did not spring for first class. I was sitting alone in one of the compartments that seats 6. This was also a mistake and a very stupid one to sit alone. Eventually the train stopped, and a man got on. He was very drunk. He came into my compartment and I guess thought I looked like his ex-wife. He attacked me. If it were not for the fact that this particular station was the border between 2 countries, I would be dead. Instead, border patrol from both countries were on the train, and while I was unable to scream, the door was open and at least a half a dozen uniformed men jumped him and saved me. I was in the hospital for a little while but recovered. At one point during the trial, one of the cops asked me if I wanted him and his buddies to hold the guy down while I hit him. I thought he was joking, so I said no, go ahead, you do it. I was also joking, but it turns out they took it seriously and were about to. I did put a stop to that at least, but they were so offended that someone from their country would attack a young female American tourist They were furious with him. So many people there depended upon tourism. But it turns out they took it seriously and were about to. I grew up in Ukraine. That guy probably got beat up later lol. No doubt, he got his ass kicked as soon as the trial was over. I, 18F back then, now 25, was on my way home at night after meeting a friend. My home was just 10 minutes away from the train station. After a few minutes I felt someone following me. No big deal I thought, just someone else walking home. But I started walking faster. I realized the person behind me was catching up. Weird. In my head I started to make up scenarios of how to defend myself if the person would attack me. Never would I think of this to actually happen. Well, until I felt something on the back of my head, hitting me hard. I went furious. I turned around and attacked the guy. My mind was just full of anger towards this stranger who, what I thought, hit me. We were wrestling until I fell on the ground. He was sitting on top of me, strangling me. I tried to crawl my nails into his eyes as deep as I could, but I started to black out. Suddenly there was this thought in my head, wake up, or you will die. Well, adrenaline kicked in again, and I opened my eyes and screamed at the top of my lungs, attacking him again. That helped. He stood up and began to run. I laid there for a few seconds, then I started to run home, still screaming. My mom was already at our door and opened for me because my screams woke her up, or her mother senses, who knows? She immediately called the cops and they could arrest him on the same night. It turned out that he actually shot me in my head from behind. They assume that the gun didn't work properly, the bullet didn't penetrate my skull and stuck in there, but as far as I know they never found out why the gun misfired. I'm glad though. He told the cops that he already followed me a few times in the past, but never had the guts to do it. He wanted to kill me and rape my dead body. I know that's a wild story. I have some Swiss newspaper articles as a source. If someone cares though. You got shot in the head and then beat his ass. You're a fucking warrior. Imagine how freaked out her attacker was. I shot her in the head and choked her nearly unconscious and still couldn't finish her off. I didn't realize I was targeting the invincible woman. Chilling with the brothers drinking at a park. As we drive off to leave, a car coming our way almost hits us. Driver obviously reacts like WTF, and I guess the other car noticed. They turned around and caught up to us at a stop sign. Other driver asked if we had a problem. We told them stop driving like assholes. Then their back window rolls down and two guys in the back draw Glocks with drum magazines. We just kind of froze up at first, but then our driver pulled off hastily. Later found out those guys got arrested for shooting someone else that same day. That sounds like something straight out of Pulp Fiction. I was exiting a bar once after last call and was with a friend who was a medic. We saw a girl laying in a snowbank near a telephone pole who had just been hit by a car. We ran over and tried to help her. Some others were already on the phone with 911 and I, not having any medical training, didn't have anything to contribute, but didn't want to just leave. The whole situation was concerning. I turn around for a second and start to hear people screaming. I turn around, a minivan was heading for us. The few people around this woman, they already started to run, but I was too late. He hit me as I was trying to flee, put the car in reverse, ran over me again, and then went forward and ran over me a third time. Turns out the guy was high and drunk and got into a fight with the women's BF, whom I bared a strong resemblance to. He thought I was him. Not to throw a pity party for myself, but 9 years later I have a ton of medical issues, and my life pretty much started on a downward spiral since then, but sure, I guess I survived. Edit. For everyone wondering about the guy, an off-duty cop watched the whole thing go down and copied his license plate number. He was apprehended 20 minutes later and charged with attempted murder, along with many other things. He pled out to just 3 years in jail. He had actually killed someone else a few years before drunk driving. How they thought that was appropriate is beyond me. If you're from the area, rhyme from this will probably sound familiar. But I got absolutely blackout drunk at an end of the year / graduation party and ended up having to get taken home early. Later that night another student at the party ended up stabbing and killing 5 people. Turns out he had mental issues, schizophrenia, and thought everyone at the party was a werewolf/vampire who threatened his life. He never went to jail, but ended up being found non-criminally responsible instead. Definitely remember this one. I live about a block away from where it happened. Terrible thing, I'm sorry you were involved. As lucky as I feel, I don't feel lucky when I think about it. 3 of those kids were people I grew up with. This is a rich lucky birdo. Subscribe to the channel and like this video and you shall receive money in the next few days. Thank you for watching and may the force be with you.